Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have Josh Weiss with me here today. As the president and founder of 10 to 1 PR, Josh has over 25 years of experience in public relations and crisis communications. In 2012, he started 10 to 1 Public Relations to help his clients deliver purposeful storytelling to create strong brand reputations. A frequent conference speaker and author, his efforts have earned numerous awards for his clients, his company, and himself. Welcome to the show, Josh. It's excited to have you here.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, let's work backwards here a little bit. Before we start talking about the standard PR stuff, we'll talk about a little bit, if you don't mind, about crisis communications and how involved that is, or you are with that type of work.
Yeah. So 10 to 1 Public Relations is a public relations firm focused on earned media. And so crisis communications is a major piece of that. But a lot of what we do is proactive PR too, media relations, thought leadership, and that'll come later.
Okay.
When it comes to crisis communications, your reputation is so important to any organization, right? Whether it be your personal reputation, whether it be your business reputation, whether that be what your customers think about you or potential customers or the general public, you name it. It all comes down to your reputation, and that's where crisis communications comes into play. What do you do when someone makes an accusation against you that's completely false? Right. Or what happens when it's true and you need to protect yourself and all that kind of stuff?
Okay.
So public relations and crisis communications are closely aligned in many, many ways. Okay. The name of my firm is 10 to 1 Public Relations, and it comes down to the concept that it takes 10 good things to be said about you to equal 1 negative. And you got to build up goodwill to protect and inoculate your image and reputation.
Okay.
And so I believe that lots of stories add up. So you can prepare for a crisis in advance, and there's a lot of ways you can do that. But then what do you do when the crisis actually happens? And that's where we offer a lot of advice. Okay. So, I mean, I just keep talking, so I apologize.
No, this is great.
Let me keep going on the crisis side, right? So there's kind of the before, the during, and the after of a crisis. And so let's say before the crisis, right? How do you prepare in advance? And so I actually keep this on my desk. Do you remember Mad Libs when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah, we have one here. Yeah.
All right. So I believe that every company should build their own Mad Libs. And so they need to have a crisis emergency playbook, right? What are they going to do if a scenario happens? So if you're a physician, and whether it be a small practice or a big organization, doesn't matter. What happens when you have a bad outcome for a patient, or they accuse you of doing something inappropriate in an exam room, or they make an accusation against you, right?
Yep.
What are you going to do? As a doctor, you should be prepared and expect that to happen, that someone's going to lie about you, or that you're just going to have a bad outcome, because that's just the way the odds are sometimes.
Right. Yep.
And so what do you do if that actually happens? So what I like to do is work with our clients, if we're planning in advance on their crisis, what are the 5 or 10 scenarios they're most afraid of happening, but are also very likely to happen, right?
Okay.
Accusation of something in a patient room. Well, let's pre-write like Mad Libs. What are you going to say if that scenario actually happens in real life?
Okay.
You have everything kind of written out in advance. Your lawyer approves it beforehand. You're comfortable with the statement. You know what you're going to say if this happens, but it's like Mad Libs. You've got blanks. All you got to do is fill in the date and the location and the detail later.
Okay.
But can you prepare in advance and create this whole talking point sheet, right? This emergency playbook. Let's do that for as many scenarios as we can.
Sure.
And so now you basically are buying yourself for if that incident really happens, or if you get accused of something, or you get that call from the media that you weren't expecting. Now you've got your initial statement, and it's short. But you're buying yourself essentially the first 12 to 24 hours of the crisis, where it buys you time, where you're not hiding, you're not admitting any guilt, you're not, over defending yourself, you're not like, you know what I'm saying? You're buying yourself that first 12 to 24 hours to really understand what the accusation is, and then deal with it, and how do you deal with it from there?
Okay. I think that's great, but I think I'd also add that you're getting some peace of mind by what like Tim Ferriss calls fear setting, right? Where you think of all the worst case scenarios in advance, and so now you're prepared. You're not as worried about it. You're not walking around on eggshells all the time. You can actually focus on what you need to focus on.
100% agree. And so that confidence that it gives you, you know how to handle it. You're buying yourself time to do that research and really know how to really deal with the true cause of the problem or the
Right.
behind the scenes and fix it. But yeah, just why wouldn't you be prepared when you can?
Right.
And
Right.
so a lot of people just don't know where to start. And so a lot of times, whether it be one of our ongoing retainer clients or whether that be someone who just wants to hire us to help them build out that crisis plan or kind of do a crisis retainer kind of
Okay.
perspective, these kind of documents in this playbook really, really is helpful.
Okay. And do you work with some affiliate liability attorneys and stuff as well to coordinate language?
We do. So it's important that the lawyer sees it just to make sure that, there's kind of like always a tug and pull, right? When you got an attorney and a PR person, because the
Okay.
PR person always wants to comment and the attorney never wants to comment.
Okay.
So there's a balancing act, right, of making sure that you're handling the situation correctly. You're saying enough to protect your image and reputation without putting yourself in a legal position where you're over speaking or sharing too much information or you're admitting guilt when you
Sure.
decide later that you absolutely were not, or that you defend yourself to the point where all of a sudden it proves that you were at fault. There's
Right.
different aspects of it. So working in coordination with the attorney is really important. That's where the playbook, having them review it in general to make sure they're okay with the statements, really plays a big role. And there's no turf war, right? If you already have your process in place of who's going to say what, how you're going to say it, who
Right.
has to approve it in the scenario, planning in
Okay.
advance really helps protect, because in the middle of the crisis, everyone's upset.
Right.
And they
Right.
should be, right? And so you have that, time is really, really important in that scenario. And so getting the lawyers on board, getting the organizations on board,
Okay.
whether it be a small little office or you're a billion-dollar company, it really doesn't change the fact that you need to have a plan in place.
Right. Right. And also to your point, when you're emotional, you're not always making the best decisions.
Correct. The other part is how do you control, how other people view that crisis, right? So yes, you're worried about what the media are thinking or the general public, but your own employees are one of your audiences that often get forgotten.
Oh, sure. Sure.
It's your staff who are the most afraid during a crisis. And so, what do you say to them and how do you talk them and calm them down? They're the ones who get the brunt of it, right?
Hmm.
If there's an accusation made, they're the ones fielding the phone calls from all the other patients, right? Or all
Okay.
the other customers. How are they
Right.
supposed to respond? Are they
Right.
afraid that they're going to lose their job over this issue?
Right.
They're the ones, they need to know how to feel and they need to feel confident in you as a leader that you're dealing with the problem appropriately without blaming anybody, that you're giving them confidence, even if you're really scared about what's happening. And so, that's all part of that crisis plan, right? How do you deal with that image and reputation in the short term? But again, it comes down to if the first thing somebody hears about you is negative, you're already in trouble.
Sure.
Right? If they have a goodwill bank built up in advance of all these positive impressions about your company, they're
Right.
much more willing to give you the benefit of the doubt or to forgive you.
Right.
Right. So, do they want to forgive you, or is the first thing they hear negative, you're in a lot more trouble?
Right. Right. Okay. So let's get back then to the name of the company, and
Yeah.
that was a wise name to be sure. You want to tell us a little bit about the origin and how you got into the industry?
Yeah. So I actually originally wanted to work in radio. I want to be a talk show host. I was very involved in politics, and my first job out of college, I was working for the Illinois House of Representatives, where I was basically um, working with all the radio stations throughout the state of Illinois, um, doing radio press releases essentially for the different members of one of the caucuses, trying to get their stories out to their local radio stations.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I was doing politics and radio and PR all at the same time.
Sure.
So met my wife there in Springfield, Illinois. We decided to move. I grew up in Cleveland. Decided to, that we wanted to move. Ended up coming to Phoenix. Worked in house at some different organizations. Essentially, when I had to decide what I wanted to do, I kind of had background in three areas, right? Radio,
Mhm.
politics, PR. Well, politics compared to Illinois politics and Arizona politics are very, very different in terms of the amount of money and the structure.
Right.
So, what I learned in Illinois was not going to work in Arizona.
Hmm.
It influenced me, but it wasn't going to be a career path. And then
Okay.
when it comes to radio, you basically have to jump from city to city as you keep moving along the way. And I wanted to be stable in one place. And then when it came to PR, it paid the most, it was the most stable, and it also allowed for a lot of creativity. So PR kind of became the right path. Did that in-house for a while, like I said, at some organizations. And then in 2012, figured if I'm ever going to do this on my own, now's the time.
Okay.
That's when I launched 10 to 1.
Okay. So, what size company can afford to bring somebody in-house? What typically is there a range for company revenue or something?
I don't think it measures out. I think it really depends on the kind of company and what they need, if it should be in-house or external and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the, clients that we work with are very large companies.
Okay.
And so they may have an internal department and they need more help from the outside or a different expertise. So a lot
Okay.
of times they have an internal person and they've got a PR firm like us, and then separately a marketing or social media firm
Right.
potentially as well.
Okay.
Um, so other times it's just this, there is no internal person and we're dealing directly with the CEO. And
Okay.
so we are their outsourced marketing PR department, really just PR because we don't do marketing.
Right.
But we'll do it from that regard too. For the
Okay.
way that our company is built out and the way that our PR strategies are built, we're often more successful when they have multiple offices or a larger footprint. And what I mean by that is that, we like taking a successful news story in one city and then repeating it in other cities.
Okay.
Are really effective at, our clients are B2B primarily. And
Okay.
so we're really good at working with industry media, right? We
Okay.
love national tier one media too, but because of our structure, our clients, a smaller client for us is probably in the 7 million and up range in terms of their
Okay.
size, but they operate in multiple cities. But we have several billion-dollar clients as well.
Okay.
If we, I don't know what our current average is in terms of a size of a company, but it's probably around 200 million. That doesn't mean, again, we can't work with a small company. It doesn't mean we
Right.
can't work with a gigantic company. But a lot of times they have an internal point of contact who's
Okay.
more of a director or vice president level, who's our primary point of contact.
Okay. Okay. That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, and it's about getting that messaging out there and building that brand, and that's thought leadership, and that's
Okay.
lots of positive stories along the way.
Sure. Sure. So, for our listeners, why don't you explain a little bit more about, because you work with marketing sometimes, but how you're very unique from marketing.
Yeah, I think that public relations is definitely a related cousin, right, to marketing,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it's not the same thing. And so the easiest way I would describe the difference, and the real marketing person might get mad if I say this, so please understand that I'm giving this in a very broad sense just to get a point across. The difference in PR and marketing. If you see a billboard, the people who notice a billboard are well, let me ask the question slightly differently. How many signs did you see on your way into work today?
Sure. 6, let's say.
All right.
Okay.
Well, but the real question is, you notice signs for when you're already in the market for it. So if you were
Right.
looking to buy a new house, you'd notice for sale signs on houses everywhere you went. If
Right.
you're looking for a new car, you're going to notice that car that you're thinking about everywhere on the street, or you're going
For
to see the
sure.
for sale signs, right? If you're looking for an office space to rent, you're going to see, office rental signs. You notice the signs where you're already predisposed because you're already thinking about it. But
Correct.
if you're not in the market for a house, you're not going to notice all the for sale signs.
Right.
Okay. That's what a billboard is. The billboard helps from that's an advertisement. When someone sees the billboard, it's because they need your product or your service right now. It's about immediate gratification, right? That billboard is about a sale today.
Okay.
That's marketing,
Yep.
right? Sale
Okay.
today mentality, a lead today mentality. Public relations is about building your image and reputation long term. So that 6 months from now, when they need your product or service, they got to find the billboard to find the phone number.
Okay.
But if you've got three billboards for three different companies all in a row, And you've done a good job from a PR perspective of getting your image and reputation and awareness out there that you exist and that you're good people.
Brand recognition.
Job, they're going to notice your billboard, not the other ones.
Okay.
I would argue that public relations helps close the deal.
Okay.
It doesn't bring in the lead. And
Okay.
so once they're looking online to verify that they're making a good choice in your organization and your company and your product and your services, they're looking online to make sure that they see that you're good people, that you're involved in the community, or that you
Right.
treat your people well, or that you have signed contracts with their other, competitors, right? Which gives them confidence that they've worked with other companies of my size or types of organizations and all this kind of stuff. And it gives you that confidence to sign the contract.
Right. Okay. Good. Very good answer. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, at some point, you decided you didn't want to keep working for somebody else. You wanted to branch out and start your own. That's a step towards the time and control freedom, but also the financial freedom, right? You may not have a ceiling, right? Right, you can grow your own company and take on as much as you have an appetite for. Was that scary?
It was, but I kind of was in a position where I was laid off by the company I worked for. The same company actually laid me off twice. They let me go, and then a couple years later they brought me back, and then they let me go
Was there
again.
damage control they specifically needed you for or something?
Yeah, in the end, that company ended up going bankrupt. And they ended up selling. So it wasn't crisis centered.
Okay.
I learned a lot about crisis while I was there, but it wasn't they didn't hire me for that purpose. It was more proactive,
Okay.
positive PR was their main goal and helping them deal with crises.
Okay.
So I found myself looking for work and I'm like, you know what? There aren't that many companies that are, Phoenix based. I'm probably a Scottsdale resident for 25 years now. We're not moving. Um, to find a company here in town that could pay my salary and that was going to give me the, credibility that I wanted, right? Or whatever. There was really nothing at that time out there. And I'm like, you know
Okay.
what? I should just go do this for myself. I'll control my own destiny.
Yep.
I can build this based on my strengths
That's
and what I
awesome.
believe in. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so it's a scary thing to do.
sure.
Most of the time when you branch out and start your own company based on your industry, you have a couple clients lined up and you kind of got your foundation built. When I started, I had no clients. So I was building from the ground up. But I think there's an advantage of that too for a lot of people, and that they can build around their strengths. The company that
Right.
I originally thought I was starting and the company that I have today are two different companies.
Okay.
And so you adapt and you learn from that process. But I think the reason that my firm has grown to the point where we've got 13 full-time people and we're, a successful company with clients all over the world, um, as weird as it sounds, I think we succeeded because we were kind of counter what everybody told us to do. And what I mean by
Okay. Well,
that is that
yeah.
everyone was saying that we should offer more services than just public relations, right? Our
Oh, I
focus is
see.
earned media. So it's
Okay.
getting as many real, genuine news stories as we can from across the country. It's about, award nominations. It's about speaking at conferences, building credibility from that perspective of thought leadership.
Okay.
That's what I'm passionate about. That's what I'm really good at. I've got a lot of strategies. I know how to do that. But people are saying, oh, you should offer graphics work. Oh, you should buy ads. Oh, you should do all these things. And the truth is, I
Right.
could have learned those skills and I could have learned how to do that,
Right.
but I wasn't excited or wasn't passionate about it. And
Okay.
I would have had to learn that. And so when
Okay.
you over deliver or over promise on services,
Sure.
can you do this? Sure, I can do that. And then you go learn how to do it. Well, that's
Right.
legitimate strategy for a lot of people. I fought that and I
Okay.
refused. I said, no, I don't offer that. I'll find a partner who can do that, but we only do PR.
Stayed narrow,
Even
but
to this day,
went
people think
deep.
we're nuts.
Okay.
People think
But
we're,
you dialed into your niche though, and that provides a lot of expertise and value for sure.
correct. But that also led to a totally different type of client that we weren't necessarily expecting. I thought that all our clients would be Phoenix based and all that. And we have a lot of clients that are local, so don't misinterpret. You have local offices and all that.
Okay.
Um, but the fact that we were so focused on PR only was actually extremely attractive to a whole set of companies and businesses that we weren't even originally realizing we should be going after.
Okay, we'll
And
talk about that
particularly, I'm
more.
talking about
Yeah.
larger companies, right? So a
Okay.
large business that the 100 million plus, the billion-dollar clients, they like the fact that we're not cross-selling them social media or
Okay.
graphics or advertising, right? They like the fact that they hired us. The person who hired us was a PR person. They wanted PR help. The fact that I
Okay.
do not cross-sell gives them confidence that we're really good in our lane. I think there's a benefit of swimming in your lane,
For sure. For
right?
sure.
And you can swim even faster and you can scale in your lane, right? There's no reason why you can't have multiple, people in that same lane, right? And that's how we've grown as a firm versus trying to spread out and offer lots of things and really dilute our true core competency.
Okay.
And people still think I'm crazy for not offering other services. But frankly, I don't think we would be as successful as we are if we didn't pick our focus.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit more about that? What sets you apart from other PR firms, and what is your niche or focus with these other firms?
Yeah, we work with a lot of B2B companies. We don't want to we kind of joke that we avoid restaurants, bars, and authors like their food poisoning.
Okay.
We just, I respect what they're doing. There's a lot of good firms who are really good at that, but we are just genuinely good at the B2B side of things.
Okay.
Our strategy is to dominate local market and industry media.
Okay.
Right. So I would look at it, we love tier one media. That's to say, like the New York Times and Forbes and the Today
Right.
Show. And trust me, we love getting those stories too. But if a client only wants to be in those publications, we're not the right firm for them. If that's their only goal, that's wrong. We're not going to be, they're not
Okay.
going to be happy with us. We're going to get them
Okay.
those stories, but I kind of view it as an analogy that I like to give is a baseball analogy. And that's because it's a big thing in my household. Baseball is a big deal. So we are a small ball firm. We are not home run hitters. So the problem with being a home run hitter, always trying to get the tier one big name media, right?
Right.
Is that a home run hitter on the baseball team, the best home run hitter might hit 30, 40 home runs a year. That's
Hmm.
great, right, for their team. The problem is they struck out 200 times to get those 30 home runs.
Yeah.
I don't want to strike out. I want to be the leadoff hitter. I want to get base hit after base hit after base hit and run up the score and win the game.
Okay.
So we just want to get lots of stories. So I would argue, again, PR is about building your credibility and helping you close the deal. So if you're
Sure.
a sales guy trying to close a major contract or whatever the case is, and you're walking into a meeting and you can hand over 10 examples of news stories from industry and local market media sources, all with different references and different clients and different things saying how great your company is, even if you've
Hmm.
never heard of the publication before, versus one mention in the New York Times, which one is more likely to close the deal? I would
Right.
argue that 10 small stories
Yes.
are much more impactful to a decision
More credible.
and much more credible than just a tiny mention in the
Right.
Forbes.
Right.
And so
Right.
I'm going for quantity. I still want that quantity to have quality.
Sure. Sure. Of
But I
course.
think lots of stories consistently over time add up. So yeah, you might have some really big stories in there mixed with some really minor stories in there. But if you're constantly threading
Right.
and making noise, it just builds confidence.
Right. That's supported by that Google study. I don't remember, like 7-11-4, right? The 7 hours and 11 touch points in 4 different locations or something
Yeah,
is
it
what.
makes a difference. I mean, and that credibility point and just, there's so many ways you can use that, whether it be from helping retain employees or gain employees or demonstrate that you're community involved or, that you're a credible business. There's so many ways that you can do this that don't have to be complicated for most companies.
Right. Right. So, what's been one of the biggest challenges running your PR company?
I think that it's not specific to PR in terms of what I do. I think that HR is just challenging all the way around. And I'm really, really fortunate. I have an amazing team. But it was hard to get to this point and figure out those culture points and what is your purpose, right? And how do you keep great people? And how do
Putting
you,
together the right team.
yeah, and really building that culture where people want to be
Okay.
together, right? Or, and also how do you make hard decisions, right? And sometimes you need to, or do you grow
Yep.
now? Do you not? Um, so HR is always hard because I take everything extremely personally. In terms of, these are people's lives. I've been in the position where I've lost jobs, or through layoffs or those kind of issues, and so
Yep. It's hard. Yeah,
it's
it's people's
hard.
lives. Yeah.
But you got to do it to protect the rest of the team sometimes, or if something becomes a problem,
Yeah. If the
deal with
company
it.
fails, everyone loses. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's I'm not saying I've had those problems where it's like, those kind of pivotal kind of situations, but I take it so personally, and I take my responsibility to my team so personally, it makes it hard. And so I think that that's something that I've had to learn in terms of a challenge
Right.
over time, how to get better at.
I think it's a it's a very important skill, but it's a tough one for some of us.
Yeah.
I struggle with it as well. Every time I try and bring on a team member and try to onboard them and pick them correctly, and it's hard, right?
Yeah.
I'm not emotionally intelligent. I'm getting better though.
Yeah. It's one of those things that we all have to deal with, right? And we all have to do it. But it's been a learning curve, not in a bad way. I haven't had problems, but I just had to get more comfortable with it. I think
Okay.
it is a better way to put it. And I'm luckily in a really good spot right now.
Okay.
So that was an interesting challenge. And the other part is that, it's not a challenge, but once you learn that you can say no, it makes things so much easier. And so we've turned down a lot of potential clients, right? If they're not the
Okay.
right fit or their
Right.
expectation is like, we're not going to succeed. I'm not saying you got to do PR our way, but you got to believe in our philosophy, right? If you don't believe in the
Right.
small ball approach I mentioned, we're not the right firm for you. And so even if they say that, well, let's try it, I'm going to say no. Like if you're not already on board, we're going to have a problem 6 months from now, and it's not worth it.
Right. Yep.
And
But and that's a lesson you learned along the way.
it is. So sometimes when you're early in a company, a lot of times you'll take anything or you
Right.
say yes to anything, and you end up spending so much time focusing on the problem child, right? Or the issues that are really not core to you growing and being successful.
Okay.
And
I've
so yes,
saying
it
no
was a
is
challenge, but it was more of a
yeah.
challenge before I realized saying no was okay.
Right? Yes. Yeah. Thankfully, I've learned that early on as well. I just this morning I had to say no to an investor who's somebody I
Yeah,
like. It's just this wasn't a good opportunity for them, right?
right. And that's
And
okay, but it saves you problems later. It solves them problems later, and they respect you for it. I've had
yeah,
several scenarios where I go back, I'm like, whether it be they don't meet our minimums or they're not, like they're just not really ready. I'm like, look, you know, come back in 6 months or come back once you reach this milestone. But, right now, you're just not going to be happy.
right, right.
And they respect that and they appreciate
I
it.
hope so.
Well, but the thing is, even if they don't, it's a matter of where you're avoiding a problem
Yep,
where
yep.
they may not be thrilled that you said no, but they're not personally mad at you. When if you did work together and they weren't happy, they'd be personally mad at you.
Right, right.
So it's saving you both your relationship sometimes to say no. Um, the other times when it's that kind of blind thing, it's just like, when you're not going to get along with someone or it's just going to create so much headache or it's not fair to the staff, we have a no jerks policy. It's literally on our website. And the no jerks policy refers to our coworkers as well as our clients. And I get, people like it, they think it's funny and all that kind of stuff, but I think my staff knows I mean it. And they appreciate that, knowing that I've got their back.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Josh. So, how about goals? What are some of the bigger goals you have for the company at this point?
Yeah, I think we can keep growing in our lane.
Okay.
And so it's not about adding new services, like I said, it's about, can we offer to more companies our philosophy of what we do? Crisis, we're in a weird economy right now, right? A lot of people are having trouble predicting what they're doing, all that kind of stuff. So does that change the kind of clients that in the next 6 months might come forward? Yes, that's okay. But what in a weird economy, what services do current clients or potential clients most likely need right away? versus, they still have the same long-term goals for themselves in terms of growth, but you still need to accomplish those. But what are the immediate things that you can help them with?
Okay.
Right. And
And
so in terms of goals, it's hard to say. It's not about growing to grow to me. We're not trying to, increase our numbers, and it's not about growing our staff size. And that's not important to me. Stability is much more important to me. I'm happy to leave money on the table in return for stability long term.
okay. On that note, are how much of your work is front loaded, right? If they have an issue or something and you come work and you set up systems for them or something in
Mhm.
the first several months, and then is it like a fractional service for moving forward or
Yeah, it's a great question. Most of our clients are ongoing retainer based.
okay.
So take the crisis piece out, right?
Okay.
What we're doing is we're building positive image and reputation for them year round. We are going to build their PR crisis plan as part of that retainer in case
Okay.
we ever need it.
Okay.
So a lot of times we can deal with a crisis and deal with it right away. A lot of smaller crises are just kind of easily within that. If it's a massive crisis, different conversation. So most of the work is ongoing and our clients are retainer based. And so we work with them for a long time. We've had clients for 10 years. They're still working with us, or several years, and some are just kind of starting, and hopefully, I'll be able to say 10 years from now, they're still clients of ours. That's our goal,
Okay.
right? So it's ongoing, retainer based, an average of 40 or 50 hours, let's say, per month. And we're doing as much as we can within that time to build up positive stories for them and prepare them and get them awards and have them speak at conferences and all that kind of stuff. So in that regard, it's not a build-up, it's a consistent. And so we know when we start with a client, we're going to end up spending more time initially because we need to
Right.
ramp up and they want to see some results. And so even if their scope of work retainer is based on 50 hours a month, I know we're probably spending 60 or 70 hours the first couple of months, and we don't charge them more, right? That's just part of us getting up to speed.
Right.
PR in some regards gets harder the longer you've worked with somebody because you've got the systems down, you saved your time because you've already got the templates and you already have the base. But to get that extra piece done, or to convince somebody to do that third story, or to get them all those aspects of things, sometimes it's harder 6 months, a year into the relationship to keep filling all that time in a productive way versus it being consistent, ongoing, repeatable kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so sometimes it's harder later, but at the same time, you're on retainer. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to fill that time every month, and we're going to get as much as we can. But there's no guarantees, right? It's not like an ad where you're guaranteed you're spending this much money. You're guaranteed, you can easily see, did it pay off and did I get enough clients? PR is a long-term story. So you got to spend the time now for it to pay off 6 months from now. It's really hard to show the ROI of anything PR. It's really about what do people think and that image and that reputation. And so it makes it really hard in terms of that. When it comes to a crisis, we do get crisis clients. And so they call us because they're in the middle of the crisis. They don't have a crisis plan. They don't know what they're going to do. And we come in and we kind of help them, we take over in a way, right? We tell them, here's a couple options. Here's what we recommend. How are we going to handle this? My view is that the client in the crisis should never be the one talking to media the first 24 hours. I will be that spokesperson for them, right? Because they don't want to say too much or too little.
Right.
But more importantly, if you need to admit something went wrong and there's a problem, let me be the person who gives the bad news, right? I have very thick skin. I can handle it. I don't care if people hate
Okay.
me, right? Let them hate me because the second 24 hours, you need to, as the leader of the company, need to go on and explain how you're fixing the problem and making sure it never happens again. So I can be the person people hate when your leadership of the company needs to be the one who explains, and they're the hero to
Right.
demonstrate and give confidence that it won't happen again.
Right.
The worst thing you can do as a leader is start talking before you're really ready and say like, oh, we think 1,000 people are affected by this,
Right.
this breach in our computer system. To find out it's actually 10,000 people, not 1,000, or to
Mhm.
find out it's only 15 people, not 1,000. You're
Right.
better off, letting someone like me say something more generic. We're investigating it, that kind of stuff. We're going to make sure everybody's whole who's affected. We're going to touch base to them directly. Let me kind of acknowledge that we're aware and we're dealing with it, but we need more time to give definitive, specific details. that's where the PR, that's where we come in and really help protect
Right.
the image of the company.
Okay. Shifting gears back to sort of brand building, because I guess, do you give them strategies to reverse engineer the stories you want them to have so they can implement tactics to get those sound bites or exposures or awards and
Yeah,
so
great
forth?
question. And you're right. A lot of it is kind of reverse engineering. So I mentioned before how I kind of worked in politics.
Hmm.
And so the way that we view a PR campaign is almost like a political campaign. So you should plan backwards, right? If you want to, what's your goal and how do you get there? Well, if you're running for office, the goal is to win the election, right?
Hmm.
And you need 50% of the vote plus one on election day. But it doesn't matter if you have all that support today, it only matters on election day,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so instead of trying to be there tomorrow, we plan backwards to get there the day you need to be there,
Okay.
right? And so if election day is 18 months away, that gives you 18 months to have a plan where you're taking a couple steps every month in the right direction and you're right where you want to be or past that line come election day.
Okay.
And so a PR campaign should be built the same way. You shouldn't expect an overnight thing. Like if you want immediate ROI, overnight results, and it's short term, kind of like I need a quick sale kind of thing, that's going to be advertising, right?
Right.
That's not PR
Right.
because PR is what's going to help you long term because it adds up, right? If we need to get a story, it's like watering the desert, right? If they've never heard of you before, how do you get them to care about you? You need to give them lots of press releases without them getting news coverage. You need to demonstrate you're not going away, that you're legitimate, that you really are a
Right.
credible source. You got to keep watering the desert, and then eventually something's going to keep growing from what you're watering. It pays off over time. And then it's a really strongly rooted system as well at that point, and
Right.
that really helps you. That's what we're really, really good at, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. What's sort of the general advice you'd give to our listeners if they have a company or a business and maybe they're new, maybe they've been around for a while? Anything in particular that you see is a mistake maybe many of them make or something like that?
I wouldn't go so much as a mistake. I think it's a missed opportunity a lot of times.
Okay, sure.
So I think that they have more stories than they realize. And so just because it's a small story, it still has an impact, right? 10 towards 1. So let's say they hire a receptionist. Well, you wouldn't necessarily think about putting out a press release about hiring a receptionist. Why not? I'm not talking about a full-on long bio. No one's going to care about that. But the small little independent newspaper, right? The one that gets left on your doorstep, on your
Okay.
driveway, those papers often have an on the move section. So if I can get in that local community paper that Josh is hired as a receptionist at Oak Street Assets,
Hmm.
that simple acknowledgement, and maybe a photo of me as well, that gets sent and published in the community paper where I personally live, that helps Oak Street, right? That helps the
Yep.
company, that helps build the brand of credibility. Now, you may have just fired 5 people and only hired one, but no one knows that. Oh, they're
Right.
hiring. They must be doing really well.
Right.
And so now you're creating, kind of that credibility source, even though it's a super minor story. At the
Right.
same time, it tells me as a new employee that the company believes in me so much they put out a press release announcing I'm part of the team. I better really work hard. Like I better earn it, right? I want to
Okay.
do even better for them now as a new employee.
Okay.
So you're buying loyalty
Yeah.
of these employees at the
Right.
same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's super simple that any company can do. If you're donating something to the community, why are you not making an announcement about that or creating a fun visual around it? If you're doing a fun day, if you're, of your staff and just a camaraderie day, maybe there's a story in there. If you sign a new contract, why are you not announcing that new contract? If you reach a milestone and you've done something, why are you not announcing the milestone? If you have a lot of data and collect a lot of information and from multiple clients, that's interesting information, why are you not making that announcement? Right? And say, hey,
Right.
in our, a review of our clients, we've found X. You're not naming them by name, but you're also a credible source to explain something that's happening.
Okay. Excellent. Those are the great advice. Thank you, Josh. That's awesome. Well, I've been enjoying this very much. We've gone a lot longer than I normally go, so I appreciate your time today. If people would like to connect with you or learn more about 10 to 1 PR, what should they do?
Yeah, always happy to talk to anyone. I kind of joke that my opinions are free. I only charge for implementation. Then go to our website at 10to1pr.com. That's 10TO, the number 1, P as in Paul, R as in Robert.com. Or they can just give us a phone call, and I'm happy to talk to them. So my cell number is 480-789-0743. It's a direct number. Happy to try and schedule a call, just give some free advice. If we're a fit, great. If we're not, it's okay. Maybe we will be at some future point, or just appreciate the free advice, and then you'll refer me to someone else down the road. It's a karma kind of thing, right? It pays off over time. But like I said, there's so many things that companies should be doing, whether it be to prepare for a crisis, whether that be to build their positive image and reputation before that crisis happens. They can do it on their own.
Yes.
If they're willing to put in the time. If you don't have the time, that's when you hire somebody else to do it, or to get that advice and those recommendations. And our goal is to be trusted advisors to our clients. That generates real, coverage results for them as desired. But that trusted advisor part is really important. If you just want to be able to give instructions and tell someone what to do, then you just need to hire somebody internally. If you want someone to give you advice, which you then have to approve, but to give you their honest opinion and to still achieve what your goals are, that's when hiring a firm makes sense.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Josh Weiss. Thank you. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. Thank you, Josh, for joining me today. We appreciate you sharing your story and insights into success and public relations. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.